Okay, so we're going to continue talking about the cerebrum and the sensory areas. There are actually three sensory areas of the cerebral cortex. We have sensory, we have motor, and then association areas. Okay, so let's start with the sensory areas. The sensory areas receive sensory impulses from the somatic system. They're mainly post-central. They're mainly received by the post-central gyrus in the parietal lobe that we've talked about before. But let's look at another one of that. Oh, sorry. Okay, so this is a post-somatosensory area. Remember, this is the posterior aspect. This is the anterior aspect of the brain, and here is the post central gyrus, that is the somatosensory area. This word homunculus, if you don't know what that is, if I put this guy all together with a big head, a big hand, a big foot, he would look rather weird and he would be called a homunculus. So if you look here, you can see sensory wise, we have a lot of sensors in our feet, in our hand, in our arms, a lot in our face. Look at how much that compasses between the face and the teeth and the jaws and the tongue. Huge. Okay. So if you look here, like if I had damage right in this area, I wouldn't be receiving information from my foot, here, hand, things like that. So that what it's reflecting is how many receptors I have in my hand compared to how many receptors I have in my back. I don't have many sense receptors in my back. I have many more in my hands and in my feet. Therefore, they have a larger real estate in the postcentral gyrus. Okay, so I receive, like I said, touch, proprioception, even pain, itching, tickling, think of anything that is those somatosensory sensations. Um, it's my primary visual sensory area is not there. It's in the occipital lobe. And remember, the occipital lobe is in the back of the, the brain, right here. So this is my primary visual area, the occipital lobe. Whenever you think about sound, um, it's the temporal area too. I don't think it says that in here, but sound is temporal. Primary gustatory area, well, that's fancy, isn't it? That means taste, okay? And it's at the base of the postcentral gyrus. If you look here, you can see that there's your tongue right there at the base of that area. Also, the olfactory area is in the temporal lobe, and that's smell. I showed you the temporal, the olfactory lobes right here, and they are hooked into the temporal lobe right in here, the way they enter the brain. So, primary visual, occipital lobe. Primary gustatory taste is in the base of the postcentral gyrus. Smell and hearing is in the temporal lobe. Remember, there's a homunculus, and there must be one on 819 or close to that. We'll have to check that out. Okay, motor areas. Motor areas are going to initiate movement. Okay, so whenever I've decided what I'm going to do by the sensory sensations coming into the postcentral gyrus, I'm going to have to decide what to do about it. I'm going to do that in the precentral gyrus. So if we look here, that is our primary motor cortex, and it is right here. It's again the same way. Odd-shaped human, big hands, because I have a lot of muscles to doing that, do complex movement. Same thing with the mouth and the tongue and the toes. The trunk and arms and legs, not so much. Okay? So the precentral gyrus in the frontal lobe is where it processes those and send out messages. In the base of that area, right in here, is the Broca's speech area. That's where I speak and I understand language. There is non-fluent aphasia that you can have whenever something's wrong with your Broca's area. You understand what's being said to you, but you cannot you have the inability to form the words properly to have a response. So they might not know what you're trying to say, even though you know exactly what they're saying to you. Also, besides the motor and the sensory areas, you also have association areas. Association areas are where we integrate everything. Whenever we take what we're coming at from sensory, what we're coming at from emotions, what we're coming at with our memory, reason, judgments, what are we going to do? It's going to take the somatosensory area and it's going to associate that with what it feels like shape wise or what the actual texture is. It's also going to be able to talk to the precentral gyrus and do a response. Visual association area is in the occipital lobe, and it's going to tell you like what you see. And a lot of times that's based on past visual experiences. We talked a little bit about, how you know what round is round, and it's because you were taught what round was. Auditory association area is in the temporal cortex. That allows us to recognize speech and music and noise. If you are having trouble and you don't understand the spoken word, this is called fluent aphasia. And you can speak perfectly, you can read perfectly, but you don't understand what you're reading or saying. That is fluent aphasia. A lot of times that's with problems with Wernicke's area. It's in the temporal and parietal lobe, and it interprets meaning of the spoken word. So if you can say it, but you don't understand it, it's a lot of times damaged in that area. As opposed to Broca's, where you basically understand it, you just can't verbalize your language or how to respond to it. And the last is the common integrative area. It interprets all the areas of the brain and parts of the brainstem and brings them all together. Let's look at this picture real quick before I close out. Okay, if you look here, you can see this is the general interpretive areas right here. Here's Broca's area right here. And over here, let's see where Nikki's area. I don't see it. But it's mainly like right in here, but it's not saying that. That's part of the auditory area. But that's where it is. It's the temporal and parietal lobe. Like I said, Broca's, general interpretive, and Wernicke's right there. Okay, guys, I'm going to do the pathways and then common disorders, and then we'll be through with this chapter. I think it's going to be 2 more lessons. See you guys later.